Welcome to Slayer the Alchemist, and on today's episode, let's discuss the new remix of Judas Priest's first album, Rocka Rolla. I did a video quite a while back explaining the difference between a remaster and a remix. There is a difference, just to sort of, I'll leave that linked down below in the description. Just to quickly summarize, a remix is when the band gets the original tapes and they're able to go back in, adjust the levels of the instruments, change the sound of the instruments. Maybe there's might even be things on the tape that they didn't use, like background vocals or overdubbed instruments and stuff like that, and they can bring those back into the mix. A remaster is when they've taken the finished product and they're just adding some EQ to it, essentially. You can do your own remaster by turning the bass or the treble knob up on your stereo. Spotify, I believe, has like an EQ thing. You're essentially remastering something when you do that. All right, so what do I think of the remix of Rocka Rolla? Going into it with things like this, it's always a little, you're not sure, because when you've listened to an album like a million times, you're not, even if it's quote better, sonically better, because you're so used to the old one, you're not gonna be able to get the old one out of your mind. You're not gonna be able to get past that the new one sounds so different. And the situation with this record, you may say, why are they doing this now? Well, the first two Judas Priest records were on a record label called Gull Records, and they must have signed away all their rights to those records. I made a video a long time ago on the difference between an unauthorized record and a bootleg record. I'll try to link that down below also. And I explain in there that sometimes artists sign their rights away to things, which means that like they're not making any money off of it. They don't own the music. A lot of times artists will sign, when they sign, they won't own the music for a certain number of years, 10, 15 years. The record label will own the music so they can go out and they can make greatest hits albums. They can put it in a movie. They can do whatever they want with it. And that was the case with Gull Records. Judas Priest had no control over those first two records, Rocka Rolla and Sad Wings of Destiny. Thus, you would see, like in the 80s, when Priest got big on MTV and British Steel and all that, you would see these compilation Judas Priest albums, and all they had was songs from the first two albums. Well, that's what was going on there. Those were put out by Gull Records. And if they wanted to put any of those songs on a compilation, they probably had to negotiate with Gull. So eventually I guess Gull just sold the master tapes to Judas Priest. So now they have these tapes and they can do what they want with them. And they did a remix of this record. It's done by Tom Allom, who did their classic 80s stuff, produced their classic 80s stuff like British Steel, Screaming for Vengeance, Point of Entry. And that's kind of the sound that this record has. Now, if you've never heard this record, it reminds me a little bit of the first Black Sabbath album in the sense that they haven't quite 100% found their sound yet, and they're still, as a lot of bands back then had this British blues thing going on. So there's some of that on this record. They haven't found the Judas Priest sound quite yet. They're not 100% there. There's some psychedelic elements to some of it. There's some bluesy elements to a lot of it. But I still think it's a great album. It's an album that I really, really enjoy. I never had a problem with the original mix, but when I heard this remix, I was floored. The guitars sound great. Again, you could slot it sonically. If you think of British Steel, Point of Entry, Screaming for Vengeance, it sort of fits in there now sonically. The guitars sound great. The drums, which really didn't sound particularly great on the original version, now have a ton of punch to them. Rob's vocals sound great. In fact, this is a good case study for how by remixing a record, it sounds like there's more energy to these songs. And in fact, there were moments, and I'm still not 100% sure about this. There were moments where I was like, man, are these different takes? Like, did they use a different take for some of these. There were some vocal times with the vocals where I was like, man, I don't remember it sounding like that. And I was A-Bing it. I only have it on streaming. I don't even think it's been released yet. It's not going to be released till November, but they released it on streaming really early. And I was A-Bing it against the original because both of them are on Apple Music. And I was like, no, that's the same one. It's just that now I can really hear Rob's voice better. So it's jumping out more. I'm able to understand his lyrics better. Just everything in general. There's more stereo separation. There's way more punch, way more weight to the whole thing. And I mean, I always liked the record, but now I like this record even more. And it really made me realize like how heavy this record is, and how much of a very Sabbathy. Let's see, this record originally came out in '74. Am I right there? Yeah, '74. It has a very Sabbathy, doomy vibe to it. Stuff like Winter, Deep Freeze, Winter Retreat, Cheater. These were all songs that were kind of lumped together on the original. They've been separated on this version, but especially towards the end of the record, Dying to Meet You, Hero Hero. Man, does it sound really, really heavy, like heavy blues, doomy blues stuff. And the guitars just now, they have so much more thickness to them that it really, really helps those songs. The opening track, One for the Road, that sounds fantastic. The title track, Rocka Rolla, there's like a tambourine or a shaker or something. And in the original, it's like so far back in the mix, you kind of don't hear it. But here, it's nice and in the mix, and it really helps the song, sound more lively. And again, the drums, like there's all these drum fills and stuff that now that the drums have so much more weight and punch to them, they really make the song sound so much better. So everything just sounds better on here. I love Cheater, Never Satisfied sounds really cool. It doesn't, sometimes when people do remixes, they'll drop in things that maybe weren't in the original that are still on the tapes, like maybe there was a vocal harmony that they didn't use. There's a guitar overdub or something like that. It doesn't sound to me like they did that here. What they did do, though, is just some of the songs that faded out on the original record, they let it play out. So that's kind of cool. You get to hear a little bit of extra part of the song there, and the band just kind of hitting a chord or whatever to end the song. So that's pretty cool. So overall, I would say that this is a big success, and it makes me wonder, now that they own the rights to these original two albums, are they going to do the same thing with Sad Wings of Destiny? Now, I'm a little nervous because Sad Wings of Destiny is like one of my favorite metal albums of all time. So that's a little bit of sacred ground there. And they haven't alluded to doing this with Sad Wings of Destiny. But I would, after hearing Rocka Rolla remixed, I would be curious to hear the same treatment with Sad Wings of Destiny, because I was talking to Darren just about this earlier, and we basically felt the same way, that look, the original is still out there. I still have the original, so if they do the remix and I don't like the remix, well, I'll just stick with my original. But man, if the remix of Sad Wings is done as well as what they did here with Rocka Rolla, I think it could be a really, really cool thing. So I'm kind of hoping that they do it, actually, because I think it would be fun to hear it. So I'm glad that they did it here with Rocka Rolla. I'm going to probably get it on vinyl when it comes out, because I just really, really like it. So check it out. It's on the streaming services. If you've heard it already, let me know what you think. If you haven't heard it already, maybe go check it out. B it against the original. Because as I was listening to it, I was like, oh, I'm going to listen to the original because I do really like the original. Maybe I still like that better. And as soon as I heard the original, I was like, whoa. After listening to the remix, I was like, whoa, the original is so kind of cloudy, and it just sounds kind of dull sounding and flat sounding as far as the EQ and everything. So this really just brings this record to life. So let me know what you guys think of the Rocka Rolla remix. Let me know in the comments down below. Till we see you again, make sure you rock hard, ride free.